Hey everyone, what is going on? My name is NGS. Thank you so much for clicking on the video, and welcome back to another installment of Materia Drop, the new segment series where I round up all news related to Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, heck, any game under the Square-Enix banner that doesn't piss me off, which to be honest, a lot of them as of late haven't been. Good job, Square. Good job. Still waiting on my World Ends with You sequel, but that's beside the point. Pro tip, I know this video is going to be rather long. Looking at all the news that we gotta cover, I predict that this is going to be quite a hefty video in terms of length. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite brand of pop and your favorite caramel corn popcorn. Actually, that's a really good question. What is your favorite flavor of the popped kernel? Comment down below, let me know. So let's dive straight into today's episode with going over news that is not necessarily new per se, but they're kind of expanding on things that I talked about in the last episode of Materia Drop. So we are going to be talking about this article first. All the news, of course, is aggregated from the great guys over at Nova Crystallis. Still to this day, do not know what is the correct pronunciation, and no one seemed to correct me. Strange. Anyway, this is, of course, going back to the comment that I made on last week's episode talking about Final Fantasy 15 and the 10 million break-even point. Hajime Tabata, of course, did an interview talking about FF15 and said that he hoped the game would sell 10 million plus units. He did a little bit of backtracking recently, saying that his words were kind of taken out of context. Basically, he misspoke. When he was talking about the 10 million goal for Final Fantasy 15, he wasn't talking about it from a profit perspective, but more along the lines of the team's personal ambitions. They want this game to be the best game in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. And by that, they mean they want it to sell the most. The highest selling Final Fantasy game as of this date is, of course, Final Fantasy VII. It's made the most money in merchandising through various animated spin-offs and, cosplays and keychains that are extremely overpriced. And I think the game to this date has sold around 11 million units when you count all the re-releases on PSN and on Steam. But I do want to say this. Y'all know I read between the lines on a lot of things. And when I see something like this, yeah, I'm kind of sniffing some BS. The fact that they want the game to sell 10 million units, I don't buy that for a second. This game has been in development for 10 years. 10 years of nonstop, consistent development, employing hundreds of people, a ton of R&D, moving from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and possibly PC. This is not a cheap game. So of course the development budget is going to be inflated. And I know before people come in the comment section and say, well, it's really not that expensive of a game because when you do this, and I know Square Enix is going to use the typical business mumbo jumbo and roll over the cost of Final Fantasy 15 into their overall developmental budgets for the entire fiscal year. I understand how these things work. I do. But you don't come out here and say, we want our game to sell 10 plus million units, and then say that's not really what you said. I mean, not to get into speculations any more than I need to, because we'll be here all night, but if the game comes out and it doesn't sell 10 million units, I think Square Enix is going to be singing a very different tune. Will the game sell 10 million units? I think so. Lifetime. But if they're expecting Call of Duty gangbuster numbers within 72 hours... Moving right along to the next article, again going back to something that happened last week in regards to Final Fantasy 15's Ultimate Collector's Edition. As y'all know, the Collector's Edition sold out within mere minutes on both PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and a lot of fans were kind of worried. They felt gypped at the fact that they can't give Square Enix money. It's like, we want this awesome Collector's Edition, and you only produced X amount of units? That doesn't make sense, bro. Well, we finally got a reason as to why the Collector's Edition account was so low, and it has to do with something I think we all saw the writing on the wall, the Play Arts figure of Noctis. This figure right here is the reason why there were only 30,000 units available. And when you break it down, it actually makes sense, considering the Play Arts figures are very articulate, they're very expensive. I think Oh man, if you want to talk about the range in prices, it goes from $70 up to, I've seen some go for 180, 200 plus dollars. So it makes sense why the collector's edition price would be so inflated. Because this figure right here, I guess it's warranted. It warrants the $270 price tag. And not just that, but not just the cost of it, but the actual development and shipping for this would have caused some delays if they do it for mass production. There are a lot of games that have had similar problems like this. Take Batman Arkham Knight last year. I believe it was one of the collector's editions they had featuring the Batmobile. It was canceled literally last minute with nobody knowing. Like, there was no word from like Rocksteady or anything. You actually got word from your retailers that your collector's edition was canceled literally a couple days before the game came out. So in an attempt to avoid those situations in addition to shipping delays, I can kind of see it from Square's perspective. Though they are taking into account the fans' vocal support for more collector's editions, so who knows? Maybe they will produce more of them. Maybe it'll be like, oh, if you come back here on this certain time at this certain hour and refresh the page 60 billion times, you might get a chance to get in the collector's edition. Who knows? Regardless of the fact, Ultimate Collector's Edition, have you pre-ordered it? Comment down below, let me know. Now let's move into the new stuff about Final Fantasy 15. This is regarding post-game content for it. Of course, Hajime Tabata was talking about the game, and he mentioned various things about it, like the Final Fantasy 15 team is interested in VR, and we've done some tests. Nothing's really on the table, but it's all interesting technology. You know, typical mumbo-jumbo. But then he got to the point about DLC. Final Fantasy 15, can't speak today. Final Fantasy 15 has both free and paid DLC planned, but there's nothing to reveal yet as we're still working out the specifics. Since productions do have their cost, paid DLC is a necessity, so the team is thinking of doing something for those who play 15 for a long time, including the possibility of additional scenario content. Now y'all know me, right? I am not against downloadable content, which is very surprising considering my outlook on a lot of things. I think downloadable content is a necessary addition to keeping a game's life, keeping its longevity going. It makes a lot of sense for them to have post content after the game comes out. But I will say this, to play devil's advocate, I think my boy Rots112 said it best. We were talking about Final Fantasy 15, I think around the time that they released, they re-revealed the game in 2013. He said it like this: Square-Enix spends more time delaying their games than actually talking about them. And if they mention, even utter the word paid DLC, you best believe that these hands ain't gonna be delayed. I think that's the best way to describe this situation. Of course, it's all in fun and good taste, but seriously, 10 years of development for a game, and you over here talking about DLC? Really? What are you gonna come out with? The Crystal Season Pass? $49.99? Really? But knowing me, being a level-headed individual, if it's great content, even some stuff like scenario-based where you can get an extra 10-15 hours a la The Witcher 3, then I'm all for it. I'm still kind of worried though, considering Square-Enix and just any company who's never done DLC, doing DLC, cosmetic or otherwise, you gotta be worried. Especially if they're gonna be coming out with a day one season pass. Ugh. Okay, but moving right along. This is not necessarily news per se, but if you're interested in the development for Final Fantasy 15, or if you want to hear more about Final Fantasy 14, the MMORPG, and the new expansion they got, there's going to be a panel at PAX East, which you guys can attend. It's going to be in Boston, Massachusetts, at the end of this month, April 22nd through the 24th, and they're going to have various panels related to Square-Enix games like Hitman, Tomb Raider, you know, just general things to get involved and engaged with the fan community. So if you're going to PAX East, drop by this if you're interested in the Final Fantasy games. Now, into something that I don't think anybody out here can listen, y'all know I play devil's advocate on everything. I'm a level-headed individual. But when I see stuff like this, oh no, the gloves come off. The release date for Final Fantasy 15 was chosen nearly 3 years ago. Back in December 2013, after 6 months of the game's re-reveal at E3, the release date was not something that was randomly decided, but it was something we saw coming considering the time and cost and the amount of resources we had. There's only one thing that I will give them, and that's the worldwide release. Because it stated, had development not been development would have been so lengthy if they were only working on a Japanese version, but they took the worldwide release into account, and they weren't able to reduce it for things like localization. But how in the world do you know a release date 3 years in advance? Like, I mean, I guess everything, like I mentioned in that video, but nobody wanted to believe me, everything was planned around Final Fantasy 15, including the Kingsglaive, the Brother animated series they got going on, all this stuff. It wasn't just talking about Final Fantasy 15, it was talking about the entire universe as a whole. 3 years. 3 years, really. I want to hold back, but 3 years. This game has changed so dang much in 3 years. Okay, moving right along. Now we're done with the information regarding the Final Fantasy 15 series. We're probably going to hear more about that in the next couple of weeks. Let's move on to something that is related to another Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Even though they're different games, we still find ourselves going back to Final Fantasy VII in a real weird way. But this is an update on something that was, till this day, still heavily speculated. How Square-Enix was going to approach releasing this game. There was an interview that was done before where they were saying that they wanted to do things with separate releases, and people started running with the term episodic, because that's how it was. That was literally all we heard in the first 24 hours. Final Fantasy VII Remake will be episodic, and a lot of people heard episodic, and they thought they were going the Telltale Games approach, season pass, $24.99. You get one chunk here, a couple months later you get chunk 2 there. Obviously, Square Enix had to say, no, we're not doing it like that, and we finally got concrete confirmation on how they're going to release the game. It's going to be similar to the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, and by that they mean it's going to be a full-scale game for each part of this multi-part series. Of course, they haven't specified on how many parts are going to be in this, but we're going to assume that it's going to be a trilogy at the very least, because it wouldn't be a multi-part game if it was just 2. They're definitely going to do more than that, unless they suddenly go under last minute. Yeah, 3 full-scale games averaging 50 to 60 hours of gameplay. So we're going to get Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII 2, and then Cloud Returns, Final Fantasy VII 3. To be honest, I think this is a good approach. If and only if they're going to incorporate the entire Final Fantasy VII universe. If they're going to tie in all the side stories, if they're going to talk about all of the things that happen there, if they're going to create a really interesting and compelling narrative, something better than the original Final Fantasy VII, I'm all for it. Heck, if you can play as multiple characters, if you can have one segment where you play as Zack in a pseudo Crisis Core remake, and then you can switch to Cloud and do all these sort of things, I am 100% for that. Are they going to do that, though? We do not know, since the game is still really early in development. Of course, being a level-headed individual, this could be just 3 chunks of the game that they want to put out there to make money. Because let's be honest, Square is bleeding right now for cash. They want to restore their brand recognition on the consoles. Final Fantasy 13 did so much damage for them, and they really haven't released a critically acclaimed console Japanese RPG in a long time. I know some people are going to point to certain examples on handhelds, but let's be honest, they were not the powerhouse that they used to be. So looking at something like this from a business perspective, I don't mind it, but I really hope that they do a good job on this narrative. That's all I'm really hoping for. I hope it's not just cut up and then dragging on and on and on and on. And it's not going to be like that whole giant world aspect that we were thinking they were going to do, where you have like one central hub and you just put in like different discs of the game. No, they're going to be each standalone separate releases, so you can buy one part here and then one part there. Maybe your save data will transfer over and you can get some extra bonus stuff, or your character can start from here. It's still up in the air there on how this is going to work, considering this is still the story of Final Fantasy VII at the end of the day. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. So we're just going to have to wait and see how they're going to handle that. And something else I do want to add on, I don't have the article here, but I do remember reading it. It's not going to be beat for beat like Final Fantasy VII, so they're open to do some changes and updating the story and the lore, and everything is up to interpretation, which, to be honest, I don't mind, considering, like I said, if it's for helping the narrative and the story structure, and for, you know, making these characters better than they were in Final Fantasy VII. I still don't think Cloud is a compelling character, nor Sephiroth, but that's just me. Then hey, I'm game. Moving away from these, let's go into another Square-Enix title, which I do not believe I talked about on this segment, Star Ocean 5. We finally got a Western release date for Europe and North America. If you are looking forward to this game, it's going to be available June 28th in North America and July 1st in Europe, exclusively on PlayStation 4 outside Japan. They also revealed the Collector's Edition, which is right here. You get of course, the game itself in a collector's edition steelbook, exclusive art cards, a hardcover art book, I believe, a Pan-Galactic Federation ID card. You get a soundtrack, in-game downloadable content, and battle background music from the Valkyrie and Star Ocean series. All this stuff you'll be able to get for $109.99, which I assume is exclusive to the Square-Enix store. It does not say, yes, it does say it right here. And you can also get the day one edition of the game right here, and it still comes with the DLC content and the battle BGM, which for $109, ooh, to me that is kind of steep considering what you get. But like I said, it's Square Enix, so of course they're going to overprice everything. But if you're interested in Star Ocean 5, which I am, it is going to be available in June. So we got a great RPG to play in the summer. And moving into something that's rather a disappointment. For those who care, this is now available. There's a launch trailer. I ain't wasting my space on this. I'm about to just watch this stuff on YouTube. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that was the end of this installment of Materia Drop. I'm actually surprised I got everything recorded in under 20 minutes since there was so much stuff to go through. Comment down below what you guys think on any of these articles, and all of the information is going to be linked down below in the video description. From me to you for now, I am NGS signing out, and like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.